Tuesday, January 9, 1951. Baghdad, Iraq. State Department declassification released instructions on file, political situation. Referring to the recent meeting of the Higher Defense Council, it is reported that after 3 meetings, the Council adopted a decision to align with one of the camps referred to in Premier Nuri As-Said speech at King Faisal II Hall. While in Cairo, Premier Nuri As-Said also agreed to proceed with negotiations on the basis of a treaty with Britain. Following this, he plans to travel to Britain to negotiate with the British government on the issue of binding Iraq and Egypt with 2 identical iron handcuffs. The British Embassy adds that in the spring, a new British ambassador will replace Mack, with Secretary Mr. Richmond. It concludes that Iraq will soon find itself facing a new British policy. Liwa al-Istidlal, Arab League, and the present situation, referring to the forthcoming Arab League Political Committee meeting, presided over by Arab premiers. Reports indicate that the agenda will include discussions on the Arab states' attitudes towards the Korean War and Communist China, their stance in the event of a Third World War, the Arab Collective Security Pact, and the impact of the Anglo-Egyptian Treaty. Talks on other Arab states. The committee may also address what is termed the Anglo-American pressure for the conclusion of a peace treaty with Israel, either through direct negotiations or through the UN Conciliation Commission on Palestine. The Iraqi premier, who is scheduled to leave for Egypt on January 15, will conduct preliminary talks with the Egyptian premier to prepare the agenda for the committee's upcoming session. It refers to the Iraqi premier's statement in parliament, which called for unity among the Arab states, describing the existing borders as administrative ones. This plan, it adds, will be the focus of the forthcoming talks, supported by Premier al-Quds's call for cooperation in the economic, political, and military fields.
Upon his return to Cairo, Azam Pasha declared that Mr. Lai, the UN Secretary-General, is expected to visit Egypt for a meeting with Arab leaders. He explained that the United States' understanding of Middle Eastern problems has improved, and that America is now more interested in consolidating cooperation with the Arab states and in realizing their aspirations. The effect of this new American policy, he concludes, will become clear in the forthcoming months. Alama, Liwa al-Istidlal, under the headline, "Will the outdated treaty be replaced by a more fettering one?" recalls the discontent of the Iraqi people over the last 30 years, except for a handful of men, due to the British and American treachery. Referring to the recent meeting of the Higher Defense Council, it states that in our current position, it would be easy for anyone in power, particularly Premier Nuri As-Said, to decide to join the Western camp. This is happening at a time when the British Commonwealth nations are studying the question of Middle East defense, and there are rumors that this defense will be entrusted to the Indian and Pakistani armies rather than the natives of the region. It is also easy for him to conclude a new treaty, given that he is accustomed to challenging the will of the people and securing the support of the British government for his policies in Iraq.
Liwa al-Istidlal poses a critical question. If our country is exposed to attack by Russia, will it be against the people or against the foreigners stationed in our country? We would like to defend our territory if we are free and enjoy all our rights. But we cannot agree to a treaty with Britain, who has inflicted great harm on the country. We shall ceaselessly struggle until the nation is liberated from the yoke of foreign rule. Since this treaty will expire in about 2 years, why then replace it with a more restrictive one? 1 year after the Portsmouth Treaty was concluded, the architects of this treaty claimed it would have secured Britain's support in resolving the Palestine question and preventing the creation of Israel. However, time has shown that Britain sold Palestine at a high price to gain American approval. What then is the motive for concluding a new treaty after the loss of Palestine? The article asks whether we are going to be driven to war like sheep or whether we will stand united against any threat to our sovereignty. It concludes that Iraq should not be drawn into a new treaty. given the many tragedies the country has suffered as a result of the 1930 treaty. Liwa al-Istiqlal. Commenting on the United States' attempt to brand Communist China as an aggressor, as Sigil notes that Iraq and the Arab states are subject to this American pressure. It explains that Egypt had already declared China as an aggressor when the Korean War began. Syria initially declared neutrality, but last night the Syrian premier disclosed that his stance would be defined after consultations with the Arab states, as Sigil urges Iraq to learn from past experiences, particularly when it stood by the Allies and suffered defeat. It stresses that the Arab states should unite in adopting a decision on this matter, as any unilateral action would be detrimental to all Arab states. The editorial argues that Iraq's position towards these American proposals should be based on the country's interests and capabilities, free from external pressure or sentiment. It appears that America and Britain were reluctant to provide a clear answer to Prime Minister Tawfiq as-Suwaidi's query about Iraq's security. Perhaps they do not want to commit to any obligations, or perhaps they have not yet reached a decision. The editorial concludes that the responsible authorities should avoid making any decision that would endanger the country. As Sigil, it is reported that Salah Jabr will arrive in Baghdad on Friday. Al-Naba